And as NIRA today, we would like to caution our dear citizens, especially the elderly, who are trying to falsify information or to change their age details in order to get access to SAGE funds. As you may be aware, the government of the Republic of Uganda provides funds to the elderly who are in the 80+ age cluster every quarter. But we have been having challenges. We have been getting reports of very many elderly citizens who are below 80 years but who are trying to change their national ID particulars so as to benefit from this SAGE fund. And we would like to caution them about this anomaly. As you may be aware, NIRA derives its mandate from the Registration of Persons Act, and Section 53 of the Registration of Persons Act restrains everyone or every citizen from falsifying information. And that Section 53 of the Registration of Persons Act usually stipulates that a person who willfully gives any false information or particulars for the purpose of registration is liable to a fine not exceeding 12 currency points or to a term of imprisonment not exceeding 6 months. So our dear citizens who are out there, especially our 70 years and above, who are trying to change information, please, this is a maiden call that you should desist from this practice, or else you may be imprisoned for about 6 months, which may not be good for all of us as a country. And that's why we also need to note that there are other genuine citizens who were born before 1943, but who were given wrong details, who have wrong details on their national IDs. These ones are genuinely trying to change, and we shall be able to give you the requirements. We shall be able to take you through about what you are supposed to do in order to have the correct details on your national IDs. This is 2023. If you are, as you may be aware, for someone to be 80 years and above, this person must have been born at least before 1943. So we have our dear citizens who were born before 1943, let's say maybe 1936, 1930, 1925, but whose national ID particulars indicate that they were born in 1950, they were born in 1948. It may not have been their era to have wrong details, but we need to note that at the time of registration, most of our dear grannies or the elderly, most of them were unable to really indicate the time when they were born. We need to note that in 1940s, literacy levels in Uganda were really low, or we are not having very many educated citizens. By then, most people, what they could only possess was the baptism card, and most of them were unable to bring it to the registration centers. Most of them came up with their grandsons, the granddaughters, and who are unable to really indicate the year in which their grandparents were born. Especially in the western part of Uganda, there are people who name sons or daughters according to events. You'll find people named Colter because someone was born at the beginning of the Second World War in 1939. But you are unable to indicate that this person was maybe born in 1938 or during the war or after the war. You have seen people like who are named after the Aba-7. The Aba-7, those were named after the 7th Battalion of the King's African Rifles that fought in the Second World War. For starters, the Second World War began in 1939 and ended in 1945. So there was a battalion from Africa which was named 7th Battalion. When they were returning in 1944, 1945, most children who were born around that time were called what? There were 7, NIM7, and so on. But it may be hard for someone to really indicate that this person was born in 1945 or 1943. So when these people, the elderly, are brought to registration centers without clear information, it would be hard for NIRA to authenticate or even establish the details when these grandparents were born. So these are the requirements that someone has to undertake or to fulfill for the details to be changed on the national ID for those who are genuinely old and above 80 years, such you can benefit from SAGE. 1, if you are 70 years and above and you would want to change your details on the national ID, you need to get a recommendation letter from SAGE, from the SAGE focal person at the district or the district community development officer. This person will indicate that this person is our resident. He or she was born in this year. He or she has those details are indicated on the national ID, but which are wrong. So we would like to rectify them. Then you have to write a letter to our executive director of NIRA, who sits in Kololo. That letter, of course, will be sent to the registry, and we shall be able to follow up. Then you have to attach relevant documents, like the baptism cards. For my dear journalists who are here, I know some of you are aware that for these grandparents, our dear grandparents, in 1930s, 1920s, and 1940s, the practice was not as it is today. These days, Mr. Jude Mutawe, my friend here of Akavos, can just have a son or a child. This person can just be baptized the following day. But in 1920s, 1930s, when religion had just been introduced in here, someone had to undergo classes in order to be baptized. I believe you are aware. So you would find someone being baptized at the age of 30, someone being baptized at the age of 20. So if someone can be able to retrieve and produce this baptism card, it would really help us, because it would indicate the date of birth and it would even indicate the date of baptism. You would find someone born in 1930 but being baptized in 1960, indicating that there was a difference of 30 years. So at least someone who is old, who is about 70 or 80, born in 1940, 1935, should be able to produce this baptism card to make the work clear, because they may not have academic documents.